In the recent decades, we have seen an increase in women's participation in the workplace, working longer hours and pursuing higher education. However, the wage gap between men and women has persisted, women being paid less. So, what would be the key element to change so? My name is Maria Jose Perdomo, and today I will be discussing gender wage gap in the workplace. But first, what is the gender wage gap? By definition, it's a difference in salary between women and men that is generally calculated by calculating the median salaries earned by each gender. But even with other methods of calculation, where other factors like position or education are taken into account, women are consistently earning less than men. To put you guys into context, in Colombia, the gender wage gap in 2019 was of 12% according to the National Institute of Statistics and Information. This means that for every 1,000 pesos made by a man, women earned 800 pesos, taking into account the same level of qualifications. In the US, in 2019, women earned 98 cents for every dollar made by a man, taking into account considerations like education and position. Without them, women only earn 81 cents for every dollar a man made, according to the Gender Pay Gap Report issued in 2020. In this video, I will be discussing gender wage gap in the workplace, and I will do so by analyzing two different sources with opposite perspectives on the topic. The first source is titled Gender Pay Gap and the Struggle for Equal Pay, published in a website developed by Dr. Sundari Anitha from the University of Lincoln and Professor Ruth Person from the University of Leeds, both located in the United States. And the second source I will be analyzing is a YouTube video published by the Prager University, which is an American organization that creates videos on various political and economic topics. This particular video is presented by Christina Hoff Sommers, who is an American author and philosopher specializing in ethics. Okay, so let's start with the first source, which is an article. Basically, as you can see here, they go through the causes, the history, the law and the limitations, and the directions for the future. But before we jump into the main ideas of the article, I do want to highlight some sentences that stood up for me because they show how important it is to pay attention to the gender wage gap. So the first sentence that I want to highlight is this one. The gender pay gap reduces women's lifetime's earnings and also affects their pensions. This is one of the significant causes of poverty in later life for women. I want to highlight this here because what I understood from the article is that not only women earn less and that's it, but it has a big consequences in their later life because they're earning less and they get fewer opportunities to save money or invest, and then when they can't continue working, they won't be able to provide from themselves. And the second sentence I want to highlight is this one. The gender pay gap is a complex issue with many causes which are often interrelated. And I wanted to highlight this sentence because the article does not pin the cause on one concrete issue because they can't. There's no one cause. But they rather give a short list of varied situations that may motivate the gap and how they interrelate with each other. Okay, now I want to show some main ideas that I extracted from the article. The first main idea is that the gender wage gap is caused by gender discrimination. This can be seen when women's competences and skills are undervalued, and it can also be seen by gender stereotypes, which cause different job types. The second main idea is that the gender wage gap has been prevalent since women started to work, and women have been protesting since then too, which has led to the Equal Pay Act law in many countries. And the third and last main idea of the article is that even though the wage gap has decreased throughout the years, it is still present. But there are many laws nowadays where companies must pay the same amount for the same work, and they can face fees if they break the law. So basically, the first article, the first source states that the gender wage gap in the workplace is caused by gender discrimination that can be seen in different ways affecting women in their lifetimes. But they are remarking how society is moving forward with laws like the Equal Pay Act. Okay, now moving forward to the second source, which is a video that I can't play, but for a better understanding, I do want to highlight um, some of the ideas that they share in the video for a better understanding. The first idea that I want to share is, and I quote, with realistic categories and definitions, whatever wage gap remains would certainly narrow to the point of vanishing. And they also state that men have more qualifications and they're most likely to spend longer hours at work and relocate cities if the work needs it. Okay, they also give out some examples of how the choices made by men and women cause the gap, which is in the top 5 highest paid careers. Men outrepresent women in 4 out of the 5 careers, and in the 5 lowest paid careers, women outrepresent men in 4 out of the 5 careers. Okay, now moving forward with the main ideas of the second source, which is the video. The first main idea is that the wage gap is a myth, and that the actual gap in women and men earnings is due to the career choices made by them. The second main idea is that men choose the highest paid careers, meanwhile women choose the lowest paid careers. And the third and last main idea of the second source is that no one can cover all of the variables that are causing the gender wage gap. And if you take into account every consideration, it can be pinned down into one cause. Uh, so basically in the video they state that there is no gender wage gap, but the existent difference is between of the choices made by them, specifically career choices. Okay, now moving forward into my personal reflection on the topic and based on the 2 articles we just analyzed. Okay, the first reflection is that the gender wage gap does exist, like stated by Dr. Sundari Anitha and Professor Ruth Person, because of gender discrimination. That it can also be seen in women's careers, like stated by the Prager University. But I feel like the second source, like even though it's true that it may be caused by the career choices, I feel like they left out the cause of these choices, which is then again um, gender discrimination. Like girls shouldn't like math, and then guys are better at engineering, and those type of stereotypes that are taught at an early childhood education. For my second reflection, it is that even if it's true that men may be more likely. Oh, what's happening? Okay. Even if it's true that men may be more likely to work longer shifts or relocate, it's because it is socially conceived that women are the ones who, when they give birth, take time off to work, which is known as paid maternity leave. And they're also socially conceived as the main caregivers to the children, so they can be moving cities and working late nights because they have to take care of their children by themselves, which is the most common scenario. Okay, now moving on into solutions. Upon some research, I found that some economists suggest that men should have paternity leave as well, so they won't be discrimination. Or companies should have transparent data of the worker's salary, so people can make effective the law. And then that's when the fourth idea and final idea of personal reflection comes into place, because I do believe what we have to do is break stereotypes, and that's something that we can do early by destroying them in the childhood education. We can teach girls that they can love math and robotics, and guys can be interested in arts, and it's totally normal. And in later on their lives, they can choose careers like psychology that it's normally conceived for mostly women. Um, but I do believe society is advancing and people are more educating and moving farther away from stereotypes, which can be seen with the laws that some countries are implementing. So I do believe eventually the gap will vanish, but the cause, even though it's complex, it's linked to historical stereotypes. Thank you so much.